Hello, everybody. This is Kim Magdalene, and we're back at another episode of Common Sense Parenting. And we're going to get started on this portion by asking Glenn Ellison. Glenn, we've got Glenn, and we've got Mr. Singletary here, and we're going to be talking about the next thing, chapter 5, actually in the book. But Glenn, you wanted to read them a testimony that you got from a very special person that you know.
Yeah, I do. Um, I'm trying to point out by reading this testimony, and it's a little long, but I think you need to hear it. I don't care who you are, how little money you have, or how much money you have, how big your house is. What we're talking about affects so many families is unbelievable. And the reason we don't hear more about it is simply because it's embarrassing. Well, this family that I'm getting ready to tell you their story got to the point where they couldn't live that way anymore. So let me read. His name is Charlie Ward. Charlie won a Heisman Trophy as the best quarterback in America. But he didn't go into the NFL. He went into the NBA and played for 13 years. He was 23 months old, and they brought him into the house and had no clue what they were bringing into that house. It was a nightmare. They said, we sought help and tried everything the experts told us to do, but it wasn't until we found the Parent Help Center in our desperation that we knew we had a long-term game plan to help restore peace in our home and hope to our family. Charlie has also agreed, and I'm reading, to be our spokesperson, and Tanya, his wife, is on our board of directors. I'm just telling you that because they believe in what we're doing. Glenn Ellison is the founder of the Parent Help Center, and for the past 24 years has been training parents on how to bring peace back into their home. We teach a program that absolutely changes behavior. But the amazing thing about it, guys, is it changes your behavior first. Then you model the behavior that you expect from your son. We want to become a model community for the rest of the country. When we have better parenting skills, we make better students. We get better employees and better citizens. Better citizens will make our streets safe again and our community a place we all want to live. That was a short testimony, guys, but I'm telling you, that family did everything and nothing worked until they knew how to deal with a strong-willed kid. That's what Loving Solutions is all about, to keep you from getting to this point of desperation and your kid being totally out of control.
There he is. That's an out of control child, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and I'm telling you, you don't want to get there. This is a nightmare.
It's an out of control parent that has an out of control child.
Yeah, it doesn't work. It never will work, never has worked. Only it makes the kid tougher. That's all it does. And so this picture right here of a mom standing in front of a mountain says a whole bunch. It looks like it's almost impossible to climb. I'm talking about this parenting mountain. But we're going to look at Unit 5 tonight and find out how we can get to the top of that mountain.
Yeah, let me remind everybody, Glenn, while we're at it here, this book, Tackling Life's Challenges, is really what we're going through. And this is a compilation of your thoughts and Denver's thoughts on how to raise these difficult kids. But it can also pertain to just raising kids in general. So, I mean, it's not just raising difficult kids. It's great stuff just for raising kids. And most people don't know anything about it. There's the book right there. You get that on Amazon. Just order it. It'll come in a day or two, a couple of days, and then you'll have it. But what we're doing through this series is we're highlighting some of the chapters in the book, and we're discussing them. But it would take hours and hours and hours to be able to give you the absolute specifics piece by piece. And also the interaction is not as great here because we won't be able to interact with the people out there, the kids. But we can talk about these things in the parts of the book, and we're going to be in chapter 5 today. Here it says, parenting beyond your capacity. This is important. So we will discuss all moving beyond traditional methods, then understanding natural consequences. So let's go ahead and give them a definition, either one of you. What would you call a traditional method, and how are we moving beyond that?
Well, I can jump on that. The traditional is screaming, yelling, and arguing with a kid.
Okay.
Corporal punishment, beating a dog. Well, I shouldn't say that. Whipping these kids.
Beating the child doesn't work, right?
Forget it. It don't work.
Yeah. Not to mention that you may not wind up in the right place if you do it. So that you just stop it or don't do it, right?
Absolutely. You can't parent that way because the Department of Children and Families, Department of Child Protective Services will be knocking on your door. I can promise you that.
Right.
Any comments, Denver? Traditional parenting?
Yeah, the traditional parent, it's many phases that can go through. But generally, when you introduce corporal punishment in a scenario, you invite anger on your part. And so most parents cannot handle that. And therefore, we go into sometime borderline abuse that may be people on the outside looking at. That's what Glenn was referring to. And so we have to be very careful when it comes down to traditional methods. And then also arguing and fighting with a child and trying to assert your will over them and controlling them is not going to work either, because trying to control anybody when God gave us all free will, then you're going to have a tough time doing that. And we tell most of our parents that come to us, they try to control their child, and we tell them, how did that work for you? But that's where in the second half of this, the natural consequences of life, giving at the child's age and in their timing of their life is really necessary to help that child build their internal controls in their behavior, a change of heart, which means a change of behavior. And so there's often or not, you can't control anyone, you can't control a child, but you can control everything in that child's life. And therefore, that's where the natural consequences come in, as they would simply, the child don't want to do what you ask them to do, then you simply withhold from them the item of value that they have until you get what you want. It's just simple as that. And every child has a currency, and that's what we teach. Those are the methods that we teach, so the child can be willingly work for what they want. That's what we're teaching them. We're not raising children; we're raising adults. So we have to get them to certainly be that person to become who they need to be in life, by holding them accountable for every decision that they make, good, bad, or indifferent. Every decision we need to hold our child accountable to. And if it's a good decision, we hold them accountable to it. But there's a reward for that. And so we're going to be comparing and contrasting the two ideas tonight in chapter 5. So let's go.
Let's do it. Okay. So it's all about finding better ways to teach people, right? Teach kids.
Sure.
So also, all right, some of these methods are all about what the grown-up wants, not what the kid wants, not what the kid needs. So let's expound on that. What the grown-up wants versus what the kid needs.
Yeah, what the kid needs is absolute clear boundaries, clear consequences, coupled with love and affection and consistency. That's what every young person needs. I want to mention one other thing about this traditional parenting, or two other things, actually. There's two factors that really plays into the belt. Let's call it that. Mm-hmm. The bottom line is anger comes into the play.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody can do that without some form of anger being involved. And number two, most of the kids today are bigger than you are.
Right.
So you don't want to go down this corporate punishment. There's a better way. Therefore, clear boundaries, clear consequences, coupled with love and affection and consistency is what we teach and what we totally believe in.
Yeah, and let's don't forget about a majority of our audience here being single women. A lot of them single women with trying to juggle all the things that they're juggling, and obviously there's going to be a point where even a 95-pound teenage girl is someone who will challenge you nose to nose, and they know there's nothing you can do about it. At that point, there's a problem, a big problem. When they know there's nothing you can do about their behavior, it's very, very difficult to catch up with at that point. So
And Kim, I want to also add these methods that we teach applies to all families. Every family can learn from these basic techniques that we teach at our camp, also what's written in the book. But most of the people, families we deal with, are people who have, or families that have children who are strong-willed, oppositional children, as you will. Those are the main ones that come because most people will keep doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. And of course, we know that's the height of insanity.
okay, so understanding natural consequences. And we're in page 77 of the book for anybody who's looking at who has one. It's the idea of natural consequence. Think of natural consequences like life's own way of teaching us lessons. So now let's look at
Yes.
natural consequences. Should we allow them to suffer the consequences instead of rescuing them? I'm not talking about, okay, they're reaching for the stove and you don't stop them from touching the stove. That's that
Yeah.
we're not here to injure them, hurt them, or cause severe or permanent pain, but shouldn't they be allowed to suffer the pain or the emotional pain of the consequence of their decisions?
Well, we have to be very careful with that one, Kim, because we don't want any abuse to be, children still need to be parented and
Yeah,
directed. But there are certain things like you even alluded to. If a child's going towards danger that could kill them, we don't want to let that be a life lesson. Let that be a natural consequence, because natural consequence is
yeah,
death. If we can stop that, or maiming of any kind, we certainly want to
yeah,
stop that. But anytime, and that's why I gave the example I gave, because this situation, yeah, it hurt this young man, but it's not going to kill him or take his life. And so, anything that can be allowed, that's not going to hurt or maim the child, certainly use that. Let those natural consequences take place. So if a child go out and get arrested, or go and do something wrong, and they get arrested, don't go get them until the very last minute that they tell you they have to pick them up. I'm not going to. I told my children the same thing. I said, if you go out and get in trouble, I said, don't call me, especially my grown-ups. I said, grown people call 911 and when they get into trouble. And I said, if you get yourself into trouble, you better find your way out of it. And if my minor children got thrown in the juvenile detention center, when they tell me how to pick them up, I'll pick them up at the very last minute. I'm not going to rush down there to get them, because I want those situations to be impactful, to let them know it hurts. It's not a good idea to continue this way. And that's what our goal is, so that child can develop the internal controls and know that life has consequences. Always from the beginning, from the Garden of Eden, life has consequences. And if we don't teach that, we really do our children a great disservice by not allowing that to take place. Will there be consequences given by us, consequences of life?
If they don't learn it at home, they won't learn it anywhere else.
no, yeah. I,
No.
I remember when my I had 6 kids, so it would always come up. Go out on a date when they're older. They'd say something like, "What time do I have to be home?" I'd say 10:30. Where are you going? Well, I'm going to a movie. What time's the movie over? Well, it starts at 8. Okay, all right. I want you home at 10:30. Well, can we get home at 11? You're going to get home at 10. What? Yeah, you lost a half an hour. Why? But can we have the 10:30 back? Nope, you lost a half hour. You better leave the movie early. And you know what? They never asked twice. After that, they stopped because
Yes.
when I gave them room and then they wanted more, then I took away some of the room that I gave them. And then they said, "Wait a minute, this is not a game I want to play with my dad." Okay, so they literally all of them stopped doing it as soon as they saw one of them lose. And I think that's good stuff, and those are consequences. But we're not always delivering the consequences. Doesn't the natural world of things that are going on in the world, doesn't that cause consequences as well that they don't need to be rescued from as long as it's not physically damaging or dangerous to them?
Tim,
Absolutely. Go ahead,
you
Glenn.
can talk about a kid that's driving, and you tell them, don't get a ticket because you're going to pay for it, not me.
Yeah.
The bottom line is he's going to do what he can get away with. But when that ticket comes in and he has to pay for it, guess what? That's a natural consequence that he can't run from, and you should not bail him out or her out.
Right.
Let them suffer the consequences because you already warned them. And by the way, you keep getting tickets, you're going to lose your privilege of driving because they'll take your insurance away.
Yep.
So the consequences just keep piling up, and these kids need to understand for every decision they make, there's going to be a consequence, either positive or negative. You get to choose, son.
Now, a consequence isn't a punishment, it's the result of their actions.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Okay, so talk about the difference for a moment.
Well, we don't even believe in corporal punishment. Let me address that. In the state of Florida, you can use corporal punishment. But the Bible says train up a child in the way they should go. When these toddlers are running around, now's the time to use that type of corporal punishment. And I don't even like the word corporal punishment because it sounds like you're beating on them. No,
Yeah.
you're taking this child and you're maybe switching their legs. You're letting them know when daddy says no, that's exactly what daddy means.
Mhm.
You can't do that when this kid's bigger than you.
No.
So it's not about punishment. It's about training up a child in the way they should go. That's what this lifestyle is all about. That's why Loving Solutions is the only way we're going to fix this mess, because it's just too late when they become adolescents and they've had the run of the house for 10, 12, 13 years. It's just that hard.
Yeah, and there are a lot of folks out there, honestly, you know, we've had many years now of becoming less and less strict on children. And so we've gone too far away from what would be called corporal punishment, but there are corporal punishments that aren't physical. There are things that you can do that aren't physical related to physical actions like a switch or a belt or anything like that, but they have the same impact on their little brains as getting a switch. What it's emotionally painful. They've lost something that they cherish. Isn't that what you're talking about also consequences instead of punishment?
Yes. Those things help help that child to build those internal controls to make the right decisions. And we even have mentally challenged people who understand that as well. If there's a consequence given in place of what that person does, if they put their hand towards a hot stove and they don't may not get burned, but they feel the heat, they'll pull their hand
Yeah.
back. And so it's necessary that every person experience the consequences of their action. And a lot of times, like I said before, some of the agencies have taught parents just give the child what they want, and that's never a good thing. You're really setting that child up for failure, and they're not going to win in the future because they have no boundaries, they have no clear consequences, and that's why they're jailed up full of young men right now and young ladies because they lived life without consequences. And now they're experiencing a long-term natural consequence, which is jail or prison. And we have met many of them over the last 15 years. And Glenn, the last 24 years, we've been working with families. And it's a very sad thing, Kim and Glenn. It really is sad to me that I see that. But that's why we on this side of the aisle, we're trying to save these children, save these families before it ever gets to a point where it's unmanageable or that child makes decisions that now the police gets involved in their life or their life may be cut short. So that is our goal and our intent in this whole matter. Over.
So you can explain, let's say there's a choice to be made and you're talking to them about this choice. And it's okay to discuss with them what the consequences of this choice may be. If you go this way, these are the possibilities of what could happen for you. If you go this way, these are the possibilities of what can happen to you. And then once they make a choice, again, as long as it's not dangerous to them, you let it happen. You agree with that?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Go ahead,
In
Glenn.
fact, we have a scorecard, is what we call it. And the reason we have a scorecard is because everybody wants to win.
Mhm.
Well, on this scorecard, on the back of it, it's clear expectations. When you leave home, you better go where you say you're going to go.
Mhm.
The 5 to 10-year-old, we're not doing that.
Right.
For the adolescent, we have to be very clear on what we expect from them. For the adolescent, we simply say, when mom and daddy says to do something, you better do it or there will be consequences. What does that mean? Well, you're not going to get to play with your toy. You're not going to get to go to your friend's house and play with him. He's going to lose something. She's going to lose something that they value.
Mhm.
In fact, if you value, we call that currency.
Mhm.
And once you figure out that that toy is valuable to that child, they will give you what you want, which is obedience. That's two things that we work on from the get-go is number one, respect, and number two is obedience. We get a kid understanding mama means no when she says it, half the battle's over with right there.
Yep. I have two grandchildren. Let's see, an 8-year-old and one turning 6, and they are like different, this far apart. You know, one of them is just sweet, the older one, just as sweet as she can be. You say no, she just no means no. Okay. With the other one, no means maybe.
Mhm.
Okay, not yes means maybe, but no means maybe. And her mom, our daughter-in-law, her mom is so good about shutting her down. You know, okay, fine. Now you've lost this. Now you've lost that. Okay, you want to act like that? Okay, you can go to bed a little early tonight. You know, things like that. And that girl, I can see her literally changing before our eyes. Little bit by little bit, like by little bit. These things don't necessarily happen overnight. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
That's right. But the sooner you start, and this is why Glenn mentioned our other book that we have, other than Life Tackling Life Choices, Loving Solutions. It has to happen at a very early age. It has to start that way. And most parents, when you start at that early age, you really get a better result long term when that child becomes an adolescent. And so every child is different, and that's why I'm glad you said what you said, Kim, because the dynamics of every child is
Mhm.
different, and you got to give each child what they need and require to make good choices. And that's how there's some children you can just look at them and they'll straighten up. Some you have to give consequences, and that consequence will be the driving force for changing their direction and where they're going. So it makes a big difference. And like I said, when you have multiple children, you have to apply all the different rules in those areas for each child. That's what we call
Mhm.
fair. Fair is not everybody get the same. Fair is when everybody get what they need. And we as parents have to take the initiative uh, and be intentional with giving every child what they need. And some, like I said, every child is different. So there really isn't one size fits all in that process. You got, as a mom and dad, you got to be intentional in understanding how that child works, what calls them to tick, and you got to get right in the middle of their life and help parent them through that process. Because parenting, as we all know, is a verb. It's not something that you can do one time and think you're just going to be done. It's a consistent process. And Glenn mentioned the word consistency. It is the consistency that of a parent that and the direction they're going is what creates that change in that child's behavior. And then, of course, you'll change in the process because then we have to model the behavior we expect from our children.
On page 81 in the book, it says, start small. them
Hmm.
choices that fit their age. This is the training we're talking about. This control gives them confidence. I cannot tell you how many kids we work with that just have no confidence in their abilities to do anything.
Mhm.
And so let's be clear. We're not just letting them run wild. We're guiding them and directing them. And when they know that they can accomplish certain things, their self-esteem goes off the chart. And that's what we want them to understand. There's nothing they can't do. But mom and dad need to be real close to make sure they do it the right way and not the wrong way and get hurt.
Mhm.
Yes, and that's where the parenting consistently come in, making that child. I think Kim and I was talking about that earlier today. That's what we have to do. Make sure that child does that chore or that task to the very best of their ability. And if it comes up lacking, of course, give a positive stroke, which is an attaboy, but at the same time, it needs to still be done correctly. And you're now training that child into adulthood not to half do stuff and to do things right the first time. And we often not try to make the child, give them a false sense, and we by letting them, you know, oh, it's all great and it's terrible. That's the worst thing you can do to a child, and then themselves, they'll realize what they're doing is not that great. If we be honest with them and say, hey, son, daughter, yes, this was good, but you need to do this, this, and this as well to make it complete. And you did a good job here, but here's where you need to make up for that, and do it to the very best that it can be done. You're teaching that child to be on a man's job one day, or any job, or girl on a job one day, that when you present a project or anything, you want it to be very well done. Not worrying about being perfect, but you want to do everything to the very best of your ability. So anytime my children do something, I ask the question, hey, did you do the very best you could, whether it be schoolwork, whether it be a chore? And if they say yes, sir, then I say, okay, then let me go help you with that process to do it a better way, or more excellent, because that's what we're trying to get our children to a point of excellency in their life. And so the lower your bar is in life, that's how the child will rise to whatever that bar is you set for them. If it's low, it's going to be below that. If it's high, they'll have something to aim for. And in my home, we shoot for excellence in all things that we do. That's always the goal, the realistic goal, that is, because the excellence to determine the outcome of this process, the project you're actually doing, and that person can feel good about themselves, and that's what builds a child's self-esteem.
Yeah, I actually had one of our almost adult age, like 18, 19 years old. I was sick one time and she said she'd come over and trim my bushes for me. Well, I never gave it any thought that she'd never trimmed bushes before. Okay. Now she did her best. Okay. I mean, she was out there. She did a great job. It took me almost 2 months to get those bushes back to where they looked like they're properly trimmed. I was like, oh my gosh, man, what did you do? Look like a mad surgeon or something hacking up, maybe Frankenstein did the bush. And but yeah, at any age, they may be doing their best, but the outcome may not be as satisfactory. And then so you correct them, you help them out, and then make sure they finish. And I think that's an important issue too. How about making sure that when they've been given something to do, that they finish, and okay, they may try to rush it because they got something else on their mind that they want to do. And then how about doing it again? Do y'all ever consider, okay, well, that wasn't done right, let's start over again?
I can take that one. We tell our parents, when you want something done right, you do it first. Let's say it's the bedroom.
Okay.
You clean the bedroom, you pick up everything in the bedroom, you make the bed the way you want it made, and then you take a picture of it and you post the picture. So when little Johnny goes to do the bedroom and he's back in 2 minutes, I'm finished. You look him straight in the eye and you say, does your living or bedroom look like the picture? Because if it doesn't, you're going to be on restriction.
Mhm.
Guess what he'll do every time? Go back and check.
Yep.
We know it can't do it in 2 minutes. We know that it's going to take time, but at least he's got something to look at and to judge how mom and dad want it done. And
Right.
we do that for everything, the kitchen, the bathroom, whatever that chore is, give them something they can gauge it by so you can hold them accountable.
Yep.
And there's nothing worse than giving a child a task and they don't know what your expectations are. And then they try to meet those expectations, but they don't clear boundary or clear understanding of what that looks like. So this is why Glenn instituted this process of telling parents to do just that. You do it, and then you allow to say, "Hey, I understand how it's supposed to look and supposed to be," and then now they're going to go do that. And you ask that question, simple. Hey, is it done according to the picture or the understanding that we have? Because I'm going to inspect what I expect. I'm going to go follow up with what you said you've done. If it's not complete, then we'll have to do it again. And, but the busy parent, what happens more than likely, they'll just turn a child loose, let them go do whatever, and let the chips fall where they may. And that's parenting by the seat of your pants. And when that happens, then that child never gets to really learn the lesson and the value of doing something to completion. Mainly, I'm glad you said that, Kim. Doing something to completion is absolutely necessary, whether it's done very well or not. If you come to a full point of completion in your mind, and that child can feel good about it, and you can go back and tweak them later in that matter, that's priceless, because building a child esteem for completion is means a lot to them, and that's what we're trying to get them to.
Yeah, one of the things that just a little tidbit for folks out there. When a kid gets home from school, they're hungry, right? They
Sure.
always want a snack. They always want something. And I remember Carol telling them, you're expected to make your bed before you leave. So one of them threw the bed together. It looked like the dog made it up. And they came home that afternoon and they said, how about a snack? Look, she said, no, you can't have a snack. She said, she said, why not? She said, well, you didn't make your bed this morning. Well, I made the bed. No, you made the bed like the dog would make it, but no, you didn't make the bed like I expect them to be made.
Yes.
And basically they were told that they were guests in our home and they didn't own that bedroom. That was our bedroom, and they're going to treat it right. And that's the way Carol did it. I mean, oh my gosh, it was incredible. And you know what? After a couple of missing snacks, they made their bed in the morning.
Absolutely.
I've seen them start out the door. I used to see them start out the door, grab their bags or late for school, start out the door and realize, I didn't make my bed. They rush back in there and do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they learn. But you also, what about doing things that are expected without being told?
Absolutely. Yeah, kids need chores. That's one of the biggest problems parents have today is they don't have any way to keep children busy.
Mm-hmm.
So having chores, be it vacuuming the bedroom, cleaning the bathroom, washing the dishes, I don't care. My grandkids, they're 14 now.
Mm-hmm.
They've been vacuuming and picking up and cleaning since they were toddlers.
Boys or girls?
They're boys.
Okay.
Mom, they know how to work. And Mama, she raised them according to this lifestyle.
Yep.
And they know exactly what Mom expects for them to do chore-wise.
Mm-hmm.
So when those kids come home, they know exactly it's time to go to work. We can play later. By the way, work always comes before play.
Yeah. Okay.
Always.
When a child starts to do things automatically, that's a point of and level of maturity. That is a sign that the parent can now give them more responsibility.
Absolutely.
That's how it works. So when you get up in the morning and that child's naturally getting themselves together, brushing their teeth, and making their bed and sweep doing their chores in their morning time, and without being told, and you'll know, because all you're going to have to do as a parent just go through and check behind them real quick in the morning before they leave the house.
Mm-hmm.
But when you see that that's a point of maturity, now you add more, because in life, you're teaching them to be an adult. We cannot forget that basic fact. You were trying to make that child build them into responsible adult so they don't feel entitled to everything that be given to them. And so that's absolutely important, Kim, to recognize that maturity in them, and then now give them more responsibility, because one day they're going to want to drive, and driving is a lot of responsibility.
Yeah,
That
that's scary.
child's not.
That's one of the scariest parts of being a parent when the kid turns 16 and drive
Oh
away.
yeah. Oh yeah. And
Yeah.
and if when you don't take that into account, and you just give that child all the reins and freedom without any responsibility, they're going to destroy themselves. I've seen it time and time again. Parents give their kids cars at 16 and they wreck the cars. And then they buy them another car and they wreck that car. The most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life. But
Oh,
we,
give them muscle cars.
yeah,
Give them a car that'll travel at 140 miles an hour and wonder why they practically killed themselves and somebody else too, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, here's one. Here's on page 84. We started into this, and so we also need to think about how we act when we're upset. Okay, so controlling ourselves as parents is a particular problem to solve, and how do you address that?
Well, we call it modeling the behavior you expect from your children. I think I've mentioned this before. There's a book out there called How to Behave So Your Kids Will Too.
Mm,
Bottom line, they are watching us constantly.
mm,
They learn way more from what we do than what we say. So if
yeah.
we're losing our temper constantly, guess what? They're going to lose their temper too.
Mhm.
If they see us throwing stuff around and doing crazy stuff, that's what we're teaching them, because they will pick it up as fast as we do it. So the bottom line is, the calmer we are in any situation, the better it's going to be for your children. Period. Peace in the home is very, very valuable.
Yeah, I experienced that when
Okay.
we were right. We had a van at one time, and everybody was in the van, and we were playing this game of. I started the game. I said, "Okay, we're going to get a point for anybody teaching them how to drive. You know, traffic and drive." I said, "You get a point if you see somebody doing something improper on the road. Okay, whatever you think it is, if they're running a yellow light or whatever, you get a point. Okay." I didn't get 5 miles. They were racking up all their points on me. Like, wait a minute. Dad, you didn't change lanes with your blinker. Dad, you didn't stop fully at one stop sign. It's like, I got a point. No, no. We got to change the rules here. But yeah, that's how they watch you. That's how close they watch you. You know, you're right there. You're right in front of them. That's why now I'm not going to say anything bad about parents who drink and smoke. But I had a rule for myself, and that was if I don't want my kid to smoke, then I can't smoke. If I don't want my kid to drink alcohol, then I can't just say when you're an adult you can drink alcohol. I had to say to myself, I will never touch alcohol because I want my kids to understand that they're not going to get that from me. If they get that from anywhere, it's going to be somewhere else. Drugs the same way, you know. And you go through your teenage years, and somebody hands you something, and you say, I'm not doing it because someday I'm going to have kids, and I'll be able to say I didn't. And then also, when you're an adult, you say no, thank you, no matter who offers it to you. I think that's a big deal. Now, I think temperament is the same way. I think being affectionate and kind to your spouse is the same thing. You're modeling what you want that kid to model too. You
Yep.
know, so parents, they see it
Yeah,
all right there in the house.
yeah. And Kim, I think the two biggest um, components of understanding ourselves is reflection, self-reflection, and
Mhm.
mindfulness. Um, Oftentimes, we don't like to look at ourselves. We tend to, as human beings, want to point the finger in every direction but
Mhm.
ourselves. But when you take ownership for your actions and take responsibility for your action, then you as a person, and then become mindful of how those actions affect other people, namely your
Mhm.
children. That's when you'll stop that behavior, because you'll recognize that this is not good for me and it's not good modeling for them. I remember when my oldest son made a statement, and I share this story all the time. that in front of a church group one time and said when he grew up, he wanted to be just like his daddy. When he said that, oh my goodness, talk about a time of
Yeah.
self-reflection. I had to really examine myself and know that it's like every flaw, every hole in my life, every bad thing that I've ever done flashed before my eyes at that moment. And things that I was doing that, it wasn't wrong or sinful. Maybe it was unethical or maybe it was just not right. But I knew then that I had to maintain.
Yeah. It's. I think we're buffering. No, we're okay now. Um, there's one of the things that comes to mind while you guys were talking about this is I've seen it on TV a lot. On these cop shows where they'll stop somebody and they got kids in the back and they start arguing with a police officer about they were just I wasn't speeding and they were, and the kids know they were speeding. They saw it in the back seat from the back seat. They're sitting there lying, trying to get out of a ticket, and their kids are back there watching the whole thing. How can that be a positive influence on your children when you're doing the things that you say never do? Glenn?
The worst thing we can do for our children is for them to catch us in a lie.
Mm.
Because once that happens, they have a hard time trusting us because they know right from wrong. They know the truth. And the bottom line is everything we do impacts our kids tomorrow. Everything. I had a situation, I was teaching my son how to drive, and he wasn't old enough to drive, but we lived out in the country. We had nothing out there. So I'm letting him drive. I'm sitting on the passenger side, and we come around this curve, and lo and behold, there's the police, a roadblock checking driver's license.
Wow.
I slid over.
Yeah.
I took the driver's position. We got up to the police officer, and he said, "Sir, can I see your license?" And I handed it to him. He says, "Were you driving this vehicle?" And my son's sitting right next to me. I thought about it and I said, I got to tell the truth.
Yeah.
I said, "No, sir, I wasn't driving. I was teaching my son how to drive. That cost me a $125 ticket."
Yeah.
What I didn't know was there was an airplane above me, a spotter.
Right.
They already knew I broke the law.
Yeah.
But my son didn't forget that.
Right.
And so tell the truth no matter what. You can admit, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. And I won't do it again, because they have to know you are human and you make mistakes.
Well, I learned something from one of my granddaughters. We were on a road in the country, coming away from a hunting reserve, and she was, I think, 14 years old, and it was this long straight road and no cars on it. I said, "Sophie, you want to try driving a little bit?" She said, "Yeah." So I put her behind the wheel and we're driving down this road, and we got maybe a quarter of a mile, and she said, "Bobby, am I supposed to be doing this since I don't have a license?" And I said, "No." And she pulled off at the grass. I mean, I was embarrassed. She embarrassed me because I broke the law to allow her to drive
Yeah.
down this straight road. And she was like, "Poppy, I can't drive. I shouldn't be driving." Like, okay, I screwed up. I just taught my granddaughter not to be, do the right thing, So yeah, I mean, they observe, they respond, and all those things. It's important for us to model those behaviors.
Because
So,
whatever we do wrong, whatever we do in moderation, our children will do certainly in excess.
oh
We
yeah,
have to be very careful with that. So we have to make sure what we do is appropriate and right before them, so that they will have at least a measure of guidance to make better decisions. My son told me, he said when he was in college, he thought about me a lot, and my voice was the loudest in his head. And every time he wanted to do something wrong, my voice would always be that guiding structure in his life. And not because I said a good thing, but because I try to live what I preach, practice what I preach. I really try hard. Sometimes I don't get it right, but I have to forgive myself and repent. when I don't get it right. So, but I'm always aware, and that's what I was talking about in my little spiel before I got my internet shut down. Mindfulness, being mindful of your wrongdoing and making correction as you need it. And you know, like Glenn was saying, there's nothing wrong with your failure, but just don't stay failed. Make it right, and let everybody know that you're human, and that sometimes you're gonna mess it up. And so, and as parents, we sometimes mess it up. So forgive yourself, make correction, and move on forward.
And by the way, anytime we make a rule and do not enforce the rule, we're making a terrible mistake. Inconsistency is where a parent will fail 99% of the time when he's training up a child. We're about to end up tonight, and I really want to get to this testimony, Kim.
Okay.
It's a good one.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's do that. But when on page 86, we're going to pick up in the middle of chapter 5 next time. You feel like doing that?
Yeah.
We'll get a problem solving skills for children, and we'll do that at the next event. But go ahead. You want to read that, or you want me to read it?
Go ahead and read it.
All right. Let me get to it here. Okay, this is from a mom, right? She says, and these are all quotes, of course, they wrote it in. I was dumbstruck, could hardly talk, and was almost in shock at the total transformation. We went to dinner with the Butlers, apparently that's another family name, and had a fabulous time. The boys sat together, and our son was so happy. At support, he came up to us and hugged us both. In the car, he apologized for his past behavior. He thanked us for sending him to the camp because he said it was just what he needed. That one weekend did more good for him than years of therapy and depression meds, which, by the way, he is on none now. Praise the Lord. Last night, he didn't listen to anything but soft instrumentals at bedtime and read through his Bible. Mitch and Scott were his angels. Jesse also made a huge positive impression on him and was a fabulous role model. I guess those are family members. He connected with Jesse as they both can understand each other's personalities and they have something in common. Our son is super motivated to become a leader and help at the next Parent Help Center, not as an attendee, but to help out. So there's a parent who she said she was in shock, okay, that transformation of her child. And basically all it was her changing. I mean, they talk about coming to the camp and all that. And yes, there's a little shock method there that, you shut them down, don't let them have anything they want. And they help them to understand that's the way their life is going to be moving forward. But also when the parents follow up and actually fulfill those things that you teach them, then it actually does work, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And all of these are in Tackling Life's Challenges in this book right here. Come and get the book, get it from Amazon, and we're going to have the next one. Now, look, let me encourage you not to do something for anybody who's watching this video. Don't skip ahead to the end of the book. It would be very easy for you to do that. I'm just going to look at the last video and see how it all comes out. No, that's not a good idea. Step by step by step, go through the book, go through the videos as we're going through them. Take the time. Trust me, your child is worth it. Okay? You'll spend a few hours learning. But the first thing I want to encourage everybody out there, the first thing we have to do is come to the conclusion that we don't know what we're doing as well as we should. And every parent should know that to be true. There's no such thing as a perfect parent. So there's no such thing as a perfect child.
And Kim, one of the main things about this lifestyle, everything is built on something else. It's foundational. So like you said, don't skip to the back. Start from the very beginning and do it one step at a time until you complete it.
Yeah. This is a process, not an event.
Yep.
It doesn't happen just because you show up and buy a ticket to the ball game. You don't get the outcome. You gotta stay in the game of life and help your kid go through it too.
Okay, we'll start on page 86 next time.
All right. Look forward to it.
Thank you, guys. See y'all next week.
You got it.